All right, tonight we're going to pull back the curtain on a hidden world. We're talking about a creature that has absolutely mastered the art of living with us, and a lot of the time goes completely undetected. It's a story of survival, of strategy, and a life cycle so perfectly adapted, it's honestly kind of genius. So welcome to our masterclass on Enterobius vermicularis. You might know it as the pinworm.
To really get a handle on its success, let's just start with a number: 210 million. Yeah, that's the estimated number of pinworm infections happening worldwide at any given moment. This isn't some rare exotic parasite we're talking about. This is one of the most successful parasitic worms on the entire planet.
And it's not just some far-off global issue. Right here in the United States, it is by far the most common parasite infection we have, with about 18 million active cases at any given time. It thrives right here in our communities, our homes, our schools. Okay, let's dive in.
So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the invisible epidemic. Who gets this and where? Then we'll get up close and personal and actually meet the pinworm. After that, we'll trace its incredible life cycle, see how that connects to the telltale signs of an infection, and finally, we'll cover how to detect it and how to defend against it.
First up, the invisible epidemic. This is really a story about where we live and how we live.
What's so fascinating here is how clearly this defines the pinworm's turf. This is mostly an urban disease. It thrives in crowded places like schools and daycare centers. They're basically perfect hubs for transmission because of all the close contact and shared toys and services. And it's usually the kids who bring it home, passing it along to the adults. The source material also points out this really interesting disparity. The reasons aren't totally clear, by the way, but the incidence rate is quite a bit higher in white populations than in black populations.
Okay, let's move on and get a good look at the organism itself. Because to really understand its strategy, you've got to know the players involved.
So you've got the male and the female worm. The female is really the main character in this whole saga. She measures about 8 to 13 millimeters. That's roughly the size of a staple, so you can actually see her with the naked eye. The male, he's much smaller and he plays a much more limited role. See, after mating, his job is pretty much done. But the real star of this show isn't the adult worm, it's what the female produces.
And this is the absolute key to its survival: the egg. It's microscopic, only about 60 by 27 micrometers. It has this thick, tough shell that lets it survive on things like bedding or doorknobs for up to 3 weeks. And notice that distinctive shape. It's ovoid, but it's got this one flat side. That unique form is a classic dead giveaway when you see it under a microscope.
And now for the main event, the life cycle. This is a true masterclass in parasitic efficiency. It's a journey that happens almost entirely inside the human body.
The whole thing can really be broken down into 4 key stages. You've got ingestion, hatching, maturation, and then the critical final act, which is migration.
So, it all starts with swallowing one of those tiny infectious eggs, usually from touching a contaminated surface and then touching your mouth. Once it's inside, the digestive juices in your small intestine signal the larvae to hatch. From there, they travel down the intestinal tract, kind of growing up as they go, and finally, the adult worms settle in and attach themselves to the lining of the lower intestine and colon. That's home base.
The adults will live there for about 7 to 8 weeks. And here's a detail that is absolutely critical to understand. Humans are the only natural host. You can't get pinworms from your dog or your cat. Its entire evolutionary existence is tied directly to us, our bodies, and our behaviors.
After mating, the pregnant female embarks on her final mission. At night, and it's probably prompted by the host's lower body temperature during sleep, she makes this incredible journey all the way down the colon and out of the anus. On the skin around it, she deposits more than 10,000 eggs, and then she dies. But in one final brilliant evolutionary move, those eggs mature in the open air and become infectious in just a few hours, ready to start the whole cycle over again.
So, we've just traced this whole biological journey, but what does it all mean for the human host? Let's connect the parasite's life cycle to the actual symptoms.
The infection is often described as relatively innocuous, which is a medical way of saying it rarely causes serious physical harm or damage. So, what does it actually feel like for someone who's infected?
Well, the number one symptom, the big one, is intense itching around the perineal region. And this isn't caused by the worms just living inside the colon. No, it is specifically caused by the physical presence of that migrating female worm and the sticky stuff she uses to glue her eggs to the skin. This itching is almost always worse at night, which, as you can imagine, often leads to insomnia and restlessness, especially for kids.
But the impact isn't just physical. There's this quote from one of the core medical texts on the subject, and while the language is a little dated, it is so incredibly insightful. It says the mental distress, guilt complex, and desire to conceal the infection is perhaps the most important trauma. It just speaks volumes about the hidden psychological burden of this parasite, which often comes with this totally false sense of being unclean. This brings us to our final section. How do we actually find this elusive little parasite and, maybe more importantly, how do we fight back?
You might think diagnosis would involve some complicated, high-tech lab work, but it's actually surprisingly low-tech. Since the eggs are laid outside the body, a normal stool sample usually won't find them. Instead, the gold standard is the tape test. You take a piece of clear Scotch tape, press it against the skin around the anus first thing in the morning, before any bathing, and that picks up any eggs. Then you just look at the tape under a microscope. Simple as that.
Now, the treatment protocol is very clear, and you really have to follow it to the letter. First, and this part is non-negotiable, the entire household has to be treated at the same time to break that chain of reinfection. A first dose of medication kills the adult worms. Then comes a super important step: sanitize everything. Wash all the bedding, all the underclothing, to get rid of any eggs in the environment. Finally, you give a second dose 2 weeks later, and that's crucial because the first dose doesn't kill the eggs, so the second dose is timed perfectly to kill any new worms that have hatched in the meantime.
But look, at the end of the day, medication can cure an infection, but it can't prevent a new one from starting. The single most important thing, the real crucial point here, is personal cleanliness. Rigorous hand washing is the most effective tool for prevention, period.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The pinworm is this hyper-specialized organism. Its entire existence depends on the very specific environment of the human body and our specific behaviors. Its success is, in a way, a direct reflection of our own. So, what does this master parasite reveal about the vast hidden ecosystems we all carry within us, and a really intricate relationship with them?